Hello and welcome to the video. Today I'm going to show you how to make Rumi from the K-pop Demon Hunters as a crochet doll. Let's get started. To complete this project, these are the stitches you will need to know. A slip knot, chains, single crochet, a magic circle or a magic ring, a single crochet in the magic circle, color change, back loop only with a slip stitch, increases, and decreases. to give our doll some structural support, we're going to create her a skeleton. To do that, we're going to grab our wire and measuring tape and measure out 28 centimeters or 11 inches. When we have that length, we're going to bend the wire and measure out 28 centimeters and 11 inches on the other side. Once we're satisfied with that length, we can cut the wire. Now we're going to grab the end that was bent and we're going to twist to create a spine. Make sure to leave enough space so that there is wire support in the head as well. As you're twisting, make sure to twist both wires so that we don't end up with one leg shorter than the other. Now here you can choose to add in the arms. I'm not going to, but if you'd like to, you could. You can add in the arms now and work around them as you crochet, but I find they do get in the way for me, so I won't be doing that. Next, we're going to take care of those pokey ends of the skeleton. To do that, I'm going to use my pliers and bend it so that it is closer to its own body. Once I'm satisfied with it being put away, I'm going to add in my electrical tape just to keep it all secure and make sure that nothing's poking out. I prefer to use electrical tape in this situation because it tends to stick to itself and doesn't come undone as easily. And you can do the same with the other leg and when you are doing the arms. To get started, we're going to make a slip knot. To do that, grab the open end of your yarn, bring it over, under, and back over your index finger to create an X. Place your finger on the X and slip the loop off your finger. Grab the yarn that's still attached to the ball and push it through that loop, pulling the open end to tighten it. Now you've created a slip knot, insert your hook into that loop and tighten with the yarn to close the knot. Now we're going to make our chain stitch by grabbing our yarn and pulling it through that loop. Grab it one more time and pull it to make your second chain. You have 2 chains on your hook, and now into the second chain from your hook, we're going to insert and start our first single crochet. To single crochet, you're going to insert your hook into the hole, grab your yarn, pull it up for 2 loops on your hook, grab the yarn one more time and pull it through the 2 loops. Once again, insert your hook, grab the yarn and pull it up for 2, grab the yarn one more time and pull it through the 2. And we're doing it one more time to create 4 single crochets into that space. I'm going to add my stitch marker in now. And I'm going to start on my second round. For the second round, I'm going to single crochet into each single crochet created from the previous round. There are going to be no increases or no decreases. Move my stitch marker over to the newest spot. And I'm going to use my fingers to turn my work so that I'm working with the right side. Here I'm going to choose to snip off that slight excess of yarn that I have poking out, but it is honestly a personal preference. For rounds 3 to round 8, we're going to repeat what we did in the previous round, where we're going to put 1 single crochet into each single crochet from the previous round. As you can see, I do struggle here sometimes with my stitches, so never be afraid that you are falling behind or you're not good enough to do it. Give it a try, and no matter what, you can still succeed. I'm going to continue making my stitches all the way up until row 8, and I will see you back then. I'm back, and I've now finished row 8 of the pattern. I am now going to introduce my new yarn, which is the skin colored yarn, into this pattern. And we're going to start row 9 after that. To introduce my yarn, I'm actually going to the last stitch of row 8, and I'm going to find those 2 loops of my previous stitch. I'm going to insert the hook into those 2 loops, grab the new yarn, and pull it through those 2 loops. Once I've done that, I'm going to move my stitch marker over to the new yarn and the loop that is on my hook. I'm going to adjust it a little and then take the white yarn and pull it all the way out. I have now officially introduced the new color. Now you can choose to cut it here if you like, but I'm going to keep working my yarn through my pattern. Now, to do our back loop only slip stitches, find the V of the previous row, and instead of the front angle, we're going to use the back angle of the V to do our slip stitches. So once again, find the V, and we're not going to use the front angle of the V, but the back angle of the V, and insert your hook, not the front. Go into the back, insert, grab your yarn, pull it through that, and one more time pull it through the loop on your hook. Make sure to keep it loose enough so that you don't make it too difficult to work into your next row. Let's show it one more time. Find the V, not the front, but into the back. Grab your yarn, pull it up, and pull it through the loop that is on your hook. Insert it into the next back loop only and conduct another slip stitch. One more time. There are going to be no increases or decreases, so we're going to only expect 4 stitches in this row as well. I'm going to move the stitch marker over, and we can now start our next row. You might seem a little confusing with all the tails, but persevere and you can do this. Insert it into the stitch from the previous row, and this is why it's important to have loose stitches when you're doing your back loop slip stitches, so that you can insert your hook and create your single crochets. And now we're going to single crochet as we did for the past few rounds, and single crochet all the way around with no increases and decreases for a total of 4 stitches. I am tucking my work as I go, and as you will see, I do struggle with this particular portion because of the size of the piece, the size of the yarn, or just I'm losing some dexterity in my fingers perhaps, but I still persevere, and I know you can do the same. Just pull through and I promise it'll be fine. Now I can see this little piece of yarn poking out, so I'm just going to snip that off. And that was the excess of the original yarn that I had. I've reached the end of my round, so I'm going to move my stitch marker over. I'm going to start rows 11 to 15 with single crochets all the way around for a total of 4 stitches in each round. I'm going to move my stitch marker over, and I'm going to finish working on these rows, and I will see you back at the end of row 15. I'm back, and we have a total of 15 rows all the way from the foot to this top of the leg. Now we're going to switch back to the white colored yarn, and since we've been working the yarn through our piece, we do not need to introduce it one more time. So find the 2 loops from the last stitch of your previous round, grab the white yarn and pull it through the 2 loops, and you can now pull the skin colored yarn out. You can choose to cut off the yarn here, or you can continue to carry it through the work as we will be using this yarn again. Move your stitch marker over, and like the previous time we did a color change, we're going to do the back loops only slip stitch. Find the V of the previous stitch of the previous row. Insert your hook only into the back loop. Grab the yarn, pull it through that loop, and pull it through the loop that is on your hook. Find the next stitch. Find the back loop of the stitch. Grab the yarn, pull it through, and pull it through the loop that is on the hook. There can be no increases and no decreases, so this remains 4 stitches in this round. We can now move our stitch marker over. And for row 17 and 18, we're just going to do single crochets in each stitch all the way around with no increases and no decreases for 4 stitches in each round. If this is the first leg that you had created, you can then choose to pull up a yarn, snip it, and fasten off to save that leg and start the next one. Now I have a total of 18 rounds for this leg. Since I've made my first leg already, I'm now going to join the second leg to the first, and we're going to start round 19 for that. To start round 19, we're going to single crochet all the way around as we have done previous rounds. Once I get to the last stitch of that round, I'm going to chain 2 stitches. That's chain 1 and chain 2, and then introduce the first leg and attach the leg by doing a single crochet. You can choose to do this in any stitch of the previous round of that leg. Start with a single crochet and then single crochet all the way around, which means we're doing 3 more single crochets into that leg. Then find the chain that you made previously and find the nubs on the back to do your single crochets into the chains. This will give you a total of 12 stitches in this round. And we are back at the start. With a total of 12 stitches, and you can now move your stitch marker over. For row 20, we're going to start with increases in the first 2 stitches, single crochet in the next 6 stitches, followed by 2 sets of increases, and then single crochets in the last 2 stitches. It should bring our total up to 16 stitches. As we saw in the beginning, to do an increase, you would do single crochet into your first stitch, then insert your hook back into that same stitch and do another single crochet. The increase in the first stitch is done, and so now we're going to do our increase in our second stitch. We should now have 4 stitches in this round. Now for the next 6 stitches, we're just going to put 1 single crochet into each stitch. I'm just counting as I go and just making sure that I'm on the right spot where I need to do my increases. So now in the next stitch, I'm going to do my increase. That's my first set of increase, and then my next set of increase. And then I'm going to single crochet in the last 2 remaining stitches. I can now move my stitch marker over. And for rows 21 and 22, there will be no increases and no decreases, so I'm just going to put 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around for a total of 16 stitches in each round. I'm back, and I finished rounds 21 and round 22 of 16 stitches in each round. Now I'm going to add in my skeleton or armature. To do that, we're going to have to wiggle it a bit as we feed the wire down into the leg. It may take a little bit of effort and a little bit of wiggling, but do your best and I'm sure you can fit them in properly. Once it sits the way you like it, we're going to continue to crochet in the round as we build up the body. For round 23, we're going to start with the decrease. To decrease, you insert your hook, yarn over, pull up for 2 loops on the hook, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up for 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3. The next 2 stitches are going to be single crochets into each stitch. So that's 1 and 2, and we're going to do 3 sets of decreases after that, followed by 2 single crochets and 2 decreases after that. We should be left with 10 stitches in that round. I can now move my stitch marker over. And for round 24, we're going to do 1 single crochet in the first stitch. We're going to do a decrease in the next stitch, followed by 3 single crochets, 1 decrease, and 2 single crochets. We should have a total of 8 stitches in this whole round. So we've done our decrease. We're going to follow it with 3 single crochets. And then a decrease. followed by 2 single crochets. Row 25 brings our color change once again. Once more, in order to do our color change, we're going to pull the yarn on our hook a little bit higher. We're going to insert our hook into the 2 last loops of our previous stitch, yarn over with the new color, and pull it through those 2 loops. We can now pull on the old yarn and move it out of the way. You can choose to cut it here or continue to work it through your piece. I'm going to continue to work it through my piece. Now I can move my stitch marker over. Now in order to do the color change, you find your first stitch, ignore the first loop, go into the second or the back loop of that stitch. Insert your hook into that back loop only, yarn over, pull it through that loop and through the loop that's on your hook. That's your first slip stitch. We're going to continue to do that all the way around to make our color change. Now remember to have your stitches a little more loose when you're doing your slip stitches, as it will make working on your further stitches in the next round a bit more harder if the slip stitches are too tight. We've reached the end of the round, and we're back at the start where we made our slip stitch color change. We're going to move our stitch marker over, and the next stitch is going to be as regular single crochets instead of slip stitches. So for rows or rounds 26 to 28, we're just going to single crochet all the way around with no increases and no decreases. So find the stitch from your previous round, the slip stitch, and insert your hook into both loops. We're going to do a normal single crochet into each stitch in this round. We're going to go all the way around, and I'll see you back at the end of row 28. I'm back at the end of row 28, and as you can see, we're sort of started to build a waist and hips. Now I'm going to stuff the piece just to make it easier for myself down the line, as it will get harder the more we build the body. I'm choosing to stuff the piece with polyfill, but you could use scrap fabric or whatever you have that is small enough to fill the space. Row 29 is going to see us color change back into our white yarn. And I had accidentally moved my yarn stitch marker over, so I'm going to move it back to the previous row just so that it makes it easier to make the color change. Now to do our color change, find the last stitch of the previous round, insert your hook into the bottom 2 loops, Introduce your new color, yarn over, and pull it through those 2 loops. Pull on the old color to move it out of the way, and you can continue to work with your new color, which is the white yarn. I will now be able to move my stitch marker over and lock it in place. Once again, to do our color change, we're going to do our back loops only with a slip stitch. So insert your hook, find your 2 loops, ignore the first and insert it into the back loop, yarn over, pull it through, and pull it through the loop that's on your hook. One more time, insert, yarn over, pull through, pull through. Continue to do this all the way around. I can now move my stitch marker over, and row 30 will be regular single crochets into our stitches. For row 30, we're going to do an increase into each stitch all the way around. That's 1 single crochet, and insert it back into the same stitch and make another single crochet. We're going to repeat that into each stitch all the way around to bring our stitch total up to 16. I'm going to continue to do my increases, and I will meet you back at the end of this row. I'm back, and I have a total of 16 stitches all the way around in this round. We're going to move our stitch marker over. For round 31, we're going to have no increases and no decreases, so we're going to put 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around for a total of 16 stitches in this round. I'm going to continue to work my 16 stitches, and I will see you back at the end of the round. I'm back, and I have a total of 16 stitches in round 31. I'm choosing to stuff the piece once more here, as I've finished making the waist, and I'm moving up to the chest and the neck. I'm doing so to give a little more support to where the waist is, and as I can feel it is a bit hollow. Once again, the stuffing is based on preference and how you would like it to sit. For row 32, we're going to start with 3 decreases, followed by 2 single crochets, 3 decreases once more, and 2 single crochets for a total of 10 stitches in each round. That's the first decrease. You find the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, pull it for 2 loops on the hook, insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up for 3, yarn over and pull through all 3. We have 1 more decrease to do. insert your hook, pull up for 2, insert into the next, pull up for 3 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. The next 2 stitches are going to be single crochets into each stitch. That's 1. Next stitch, that's another one. We're going to follow it by decreases once more. Now I'm going to move my stitch marker over, and for row 33 we're just going to do 1 single crochet all the way around with no increases and no decreases for a total of 10 stitches in this round. At the end of round 33, we're going to stuff this piece once more. I'm going to use my polyfill, and this is to help give the body a bit more structure. We're going to start on the neck and the head. To start the neck, we're going to decrease all the way around to bring our total stitch count to 5 stitches. So we insert our hook, yarn up, insert the hook into the next stitch, yarn up for 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. Once more, find your next stitch, insert your hook, pull the yarn up for 2 loops, into the next stitch, pull the yarn up for 3 loops, yarn over, and pull through all 3 stitches. For round 35, we're just going to put 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around for a total of 5 stitches. We have no increases and no decreases. We have reached the end of Rumi's white top, so we're going to switch to our skin colored yarn to complete the neck. So to do that, for row 36, we're going to do our color change in the back loops only, while slip stitching with our skin colored yarn. There's going to be no increases and no decreases, so we only have 5 stitches for this. To get started, we're going to insert our hook into the last 2 loops of the previous stitch, yarn over and pull our skin colored yarn through, and then we're going to grab our white yarn and pull it all the way out to tighten our stitch. We can now cut the white yarn off because we are finally done making the clothing for Rumi. We're now going to move our stitch marker over. And we're going to do the back loops only slip stitches with our new yarn. So find that first stitch, insert your hook into the back loop only, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. We're going to continue that all the way around with no increases and no decreases for 5 stitches in total in this complete round. With round 36 complete, we can now move our stitch marker over. For round 37, there's going to be no increases and no decreases, so our stitch count stays the same at 5 stitches. As I'm making my way around this round, I'm going to weave in the end of my white yarn. For this round, there's only going to be single crochets all the way around. Once again, no increases and no decreases. It's a bit tight, but do your best. I know you can do this. Here I'm going to pause and snip off that excess white yarn because I believe I have woven it enough into my work. Now I move my stitch marker over, and for round 38 there's going to be increases all the way around. So each stitch will have an increased stitch placed into it. And we're going to repeat that all the way around to increase our stitch count from 5 to 10. At the end of round 38, we move our stitch marker over and begin round 39. For round 39, we start with 2 single crochets, followed by 3 increases. So your first stitch has a single crochet, your next stitch has a single crochet. Now we begin our increases. Find the next stitch, and into that stitch you're going to put 2 single crochets for your first increase. That's 1 single crochet, insert back into that same stitch for your second single crochet, and that completes your first increase. Find your next stitch, insert and make a single crochet, insert once more and make your second single crochet. That's your second increase complete. Find your next stitch, insert and place a single crochet, back again for your second single crochet for your third increase. Now once again, we're going to repeat it with 2 single crochets followed by 3 increases for a total of 16 stitches in this round. At the end, we once again move our stitch marker over and we'll begin round 40. So for round 40, we're going to do a single crochet increase all the way around. So that means we're going to do a single crochet increase, a single crochet increase. To get started, insert your first stitch and make a single crochet. Find the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over and make your single crochet. Back into that same stitch and make another single crochet for your increase. We're going to repeat that all the way around. I'm going to complete the rest of the way and I'll see you back at the end. I'm back and now I have a total of 24 stitches in this round. I'm going to move my stitch marker over and we're going to try to stuff the chest and the neck because we're going to have a harder time later on, so now is the best opportunity. Now that it's done, round 41 to 48 is going to have 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around with no increases and no decreases. I'm going to complete these rounds and I will see you back at the end of them. I'm back and I have a total of 48 rounds for this doll. Round 48 has 24 stitches all the way around. The head's quite hollow, so before we stuff the piece, we're going to take the opportunity to affix the eyes. I'm placing my eyes approximately between the 4th and 5th row from the top. However, you can choose to adjust them as it works for your doll. Before I place the backing for the eyes, I'm going to stuff the head to make sure that the eye placement still works while the head is stuffed. Make adjustments as needed and move your doll around to see if it works from different directions. Once I'm satisfied with the way it looks, I'm going to take the stuffing back out again and going to place the backing for my eyes. Once the backings are secure in place, I'm going to stuff the head once more and maybe put a little extra so it becomes easier for me to stuff as I lower the count in stitches. For round 49, we're going to do a single crochet and decrease all the way around. To get started, insert your hook and complete a single crochet. Insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. Once more, a single crochet into the next stitch, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop for 2, insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop for 3, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. I'm going to complete round 49 and I will see you back at the end. I'm back, and for round 49 I now have a total of 16 stitches all the way around. I can now move my stitch marker over and begin round 50. For round 50, where there's going to be only single crochets all the way around with no increases and no decreases, for a total of 16 stitches for this round. I will complete round 50 and I will meet you back. I'm back, and having completed round 50 with a total of 16 stitches in this round, I can continue to stuff the piece so that the head is nice and firm. For round 51, there's going to be decreases all the way around for a total of 8 stitches. It does become harder to work with the stuffing in the way, but please persevere, I know you can do this. We're going to insert our hook, yarn over for 1 loop, insert our hook for another loop, yarn over and pull the yarn through all 3 loops. Find the next stitch, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop, insert it into the next stitch, yarn over, and pull up for another loop, yarn over and pull it through all 3 loops on your hook. And we're going to continue that all the way around. I'm back and I have a total of 8 stitches at the end of round 51. Now we can fasten off and weave in the ends for our doll. Pull up a long piece of thread before you snip it. And then cut in an appropriate place. I'm going to take the open end of my yarn and thread it through a tapestry needle. And each person has a different way of closing their pieces. This is mine. I'm going to remove my stitch marker. I'm going to find that first stitch and insert my hook under the first stitch. And it goes into the doll and then come out from the second stitch, back in through the third stitch, and out through the fourth, and continue all the way around. Once I've fed my yarn through all the stitches, I'm going to pull the yarn tight in order to close the opening. When I'm satisfied with the way the opening is closed, I will tie off the yarn and feed it back through the head. I am not as concerned about the placement of the knot with this doll as she will be having hair covering it. However, if you do have a bald doll, you might have to be careful about the placement of the knot and how you feed it back into the doll. Once you feed the yarn back through the doll's head, I'm just going to snip off the excess and ensure that the head still sits properly. To get started on the arms, you're going to need your wire, a measuring tape, pliers, and not featured here is the electrical tape. To get started with the wire, you're going to bring your doll and you're going to take an approximate measurement of how long you would like her arm to be. I've already made my armature in advance, and my measurements were 10 centimeters for the arm length, 4 centimeters for the center, and the other arm length would also be 10 centimeters, which would give me a total of 24, or 9.5 inches. I've already bent one end and sealed it off with the electrical tape, but I've left the other side unbent so that I could feed it into the doll. I'm going to gently and carefully feed it through. And once again, adjust to see that it's fitting correctly. I would like it to come out to mid-thigh, and once I see it's sitting well and I have it centered, I'm then able to bend the arm to match its other side. Once I have it bent and ready to be sealed, I'm going to seal it up with electrical tape. To get started on the arm, you're going to need your skin colored yarn, stitch markers, your 3.0mm hook, and a pair of scissors. To get started, take your yarn and make a slip knot. Insert your hook, and for round 1, chain 2 and put 4 single crochets into the second chain from the hook. Insert your stitch marker at the end of the last stitch of that round. For rounds 2 to 14, we're going to do single crochets all the way around with no increases and no decreases for a total of 4 stitches in each round. At the end of round 2, before I move up, I'm going to flip the work so that it has the right side facing outwards. It also makes it easier for me to work in the rounds as I continue on. I'm going to move my stitch marker over and continue on with round 3. At the end of round 3, I'm going to move my stitch marker over and begin round 4. I'm going to continue with round 4 and go all the way up to round 14, and I will meet you back at the end. I'm back and I have a total of 14 rounds all the way. I've moved my stitch marker to the last stitch. For round 15, we're going to do 2 single crochets, 1, 2, followed by slip stitch, and we can now fasten off. I pull up the string all the way up and then can snip it. Pull out the excess yarn, and since I've already made my second arm, I can go ahead and attach it to my doll. Now to attach it to the doll, all you need to do is feed the skeleton into the arm. I'm making adjustments as I go to make sure that it sits well. Once I'm satisfied with the way it sits, I can then attach the arms to the body using a tapestry needle and the excess yarn from the arms. There is no true method for attaching it that I use. It is merely seeing where it sits and stitching it in. If you find that there's another method that works better for you, I would suggest following that. This is just how I make mine. I'm going to now finish attaching both arms to the doll, and I will meet you back once they're all complete. I'm back, and the arms are now attached. Hooray! While the arms do have only a single wire running through them, they can still be individually modeled and shaped for different poses. Next, let's move on to the hair. To create the hair, you're going to need your purple yarn, a stitch marker, and your 3.0mm hook. To begin, we're going to create a magic circle. To make a magic circle, you're going to pinch the open end of your yarn between your thumb and your index finger. Take the yarn and go over your index and your middle finger, under and back over to create an X. Now grab your hook, go under the first, over the second, and grab the second and pull it through to create a loop on your hook. You can now slip that ring off your finger and make a slip stitch to secure your magic circle. You can adjust the width of your circle at this point to make it larger or smaller to make it comfortable, just to make sure that you don't lose the open end of your yarn through that circle. I'm going to place my stitch marker and I'm going to begin round 1. For round 1, we're only going to make 8 single crochets into the magic circle. So insert your hook into the magic circle as if you were inserting it into a stitch, and continue to make single crochets all the way around into that circle. Now that you've completed the first round, you can pull that open end of the yarn to tighten that hole. Move your stitch marker over, and we're going to begin round 2. For round 2, we're going to do increases all the way around. So into each stitch, you're going to add 2 single crochets. That's your first single crochet, and back into that same stitch and make another single crochet. We're going to do this all the way around for a total of 16 stitches. At the end of round 2, I have a total of 16 stitches. I'm going to move my stitch marker over and close up the hole in the center. As you can see, that hole is rather visible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my work securely and pull that open end of the yarn. I hear a small snick or a snap that tells me that my knot has locked into place. Now the hole should not open after this. Once it's nice and secure, I can now start weaving in my end into my work. Or you could leave it and weave it in towards the end. It is entirely up to you. For round 3, I'm going to put 1 single crochet followed by an increase all the way around for a total of 24 stitches. So to get started, find your first stitch, insert your hook, and make 1 single crochet. Into the next stitch, insert your hook, make a single crochet, back into that same stitch and put another single crochet for your increase. We're going to do that all the way around, and we should have a total of 24 stitches at the end. Now I'm going to complete my round and I'll see you back at the end. I'm back and I have a total of 24 stitches in this round, and I've moved my stitch marker over. Now for rounds 4 to 10, it's going to be 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around with no increases and no decreases. You should have a total of 24 stitches for each round. I'm going to build up the piece to fit like a skull cap on the head of the doll. So rather than going wider, I want to go taller. I'm going to complete my rounds and I will see you back at the end of round 10. I'm back and we now have a total of 10 rounds from the base. And in round 10, I have a total of 24 stitches. I've moved my stitch marker over, and for round 11, it's going to be a bit complicated. We're going to slip stitch into the next stitch, and we're then going to chain 61. I'm going to continue making my chains until I reach 61 chains from the base, and I will meet you back on my 61st chain. I'm back, and I now have a total of 61 chains from the base until my hook. Now starting from the second chain from the hook, I'm going to place a slip stitch into 30 stitches. So find the second chain from the hook, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops. And we're going to repeat that 29 more times. It can be a bit fiddly, but stick with it. I know you can do this. I'm going to continue until I reach that 30th slip stitch, and I will see you back then. I'm back, and I've now completed a total of 30 slip stitches. Now into the remaining 30 chains, I'm going to put 1 single crochet into each chain until I reach the cap. So find that next stitch, insert your hook, and make your first single crochet. And we're going to continue that all the way down. I'm going to finish my 30 single crochets, and I will meet you back at the base of the cap. I'm back, and I have a total of 30 slip stitches and 30 single crochets in this entire chain row. For the next stitch in this round, you're going to find the next stitch in the cap and slip stitch into that stitch. So find that next stitch, insert your hook, and slip stitch. And now we're going to repeat what we just did all over again. So we're going to chain 61 chains. And we're going to do slip stitches into the first 30, followed by single crochets into the remaining 30. I'm going to complete my 61 chains, and I will see you at the top. Here I am at my 61st chain. And from here, once again, starting from the second chain from the hook, we're going to do slip stitches for 30 chains. So find that second chain from your hook, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. Continue all the way down for 30 chains. Now I'm going to finish up my slip stitches, and I will see you back once I've completed my 30th slip stitch. I'm back, and I've completed my 30 slip stitches. Now in the remaining 30 chains, we're going to place a single crochet into each chain until we reach the cap. So find that next chain, insert your hook, yarn over, pull it through for 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, and pull through both 2 loops. I'm going to complete my single crochets, and I will meet you back once I reach the base of the cap. I'm back, and I've completed my second set of slip stitches and single crochets into a chain of 61. Now we're going to repeat this all one more time. So find that next stitch in the cap and slip stitch into that stitch. Once again, you're going to chain 61, slip stitch for 30, and single crochet for 30 until we reach back to the base. I'm going to complete that, and I'll see you back. I'm back, and I've now completed my third and final of the slip stitch with single crochets into a chain of 61. I'm now going to fasten off, and to do that, I'm going to find the next stitch in the cap and perform a simple slip stitch. Draw up a long loop to stitch in the cap, and then snip my yarn. Now that the wig is complete, we're going to attach it to the head. Take your embroidery needle and place the cap onto the head. I'm placing my 3 long strands right in the center, and I'm going to pin them into place to make sure that the wig doesn't move around as I'm stitching it in. Now, a lot of what I'm doing here is very subjective, and each person has a different way on how they would like to attach the wig to the head. Some people choose to glue it on with fabric glue or hot glue. I'm choosing to stitch it on. If you are a first timer to making dolls and such and you prefer to hot glue or glue it on with fabric glue, you can do that too. I'm going to complete stitching my wig to the head and I will see you back. I'm back and I finished fastening the wig to the head. I still have a long tail of yarn left over because I would like to weave in that yarn through the braid so that the braid doesn't move around on the head either. Now, having the doll facing me, I'm going to start braiding the hair. And this is so that I can adjust it to make sure it looks just right. Once I'm satisfied with the way it looks, I can start pinning it into place so that I can begin sewing it to the head. Once again, this method is rather subjective. If you'd rather hot glue it to the head, you can do that too. In the same way, if you'd rather fabric glue it to the head, that works as well. And there you have it. The hair is now attached to the doll and all braided, and we can now move on to embroidering the eyes. To embroider the eyes, you're going to need some white yarn, black yarn, and purple yarn for the eyebrows. You're also going to need your embroidery needle and a pair of scissors. To begin, we're going to start with the white yarn, and we're going to thread it through our needle. Once that's done, I'm going to feed the yarn into the side of the head of the doll and try to come out somewhere close to the eye. Now, where you place the whites of the eye and how you place it is entirely subjective, and it is entirely up to you how you would like it to sit and work for you. I'm going to put the yarn back into the doll, into the other side, and gently tug it to create the whites of the eye. Now once again, I'm going to feed the yarn back into the doll, and I'm going to try to come out once more at my original point of entry. Gently tug it once more to create the whites of the eye. Not too much pressure. And once I'm satisfied with the way it looks, I can then tie off my yarn and snip the loose ends and feed it back into the doll. Next, I'm going to take my black yarn and thread it through my needle. Once again, I'm going to try and feed it in an inconspicuous spot. And as you can see, I am struggling here. It's because I was trying to find a good point of entry that works for me. I'm going to enter in closer to the central area of the face rather than on the outside this time, because I would like to create the eyelash effect. I'm going to feed the yarn back into the doll on the other side of the eye at the halfway point, and then feed the yarn at a slight angle upwards. It's to create that swooping effect I'd like to have with her eyelashes. I'm going to feed that yarn back in and then come out close to the other eye. Once again, going over to the other side at the halfway point and then going upwards at an angle and then gently placing the yarn into position and coming back in, and I'm going to try to exit once again at my original point of entry. It just makes cleaning up ends a lot easier. And now that I'm done with that, I can tie off my ends. Snip the excess. And then hide that open end back into the doll. Next, for the eyebrows, we're going to thread our purple yarn onto our needle. Once again, find an inconspicuous spot to enter your yarn into the doll. Bring it close to where you would like the eyebrows to be. Feed it back out into the other side. And gently tug on the yarn so that you can position it the way you'd like it to sit. one more time, feed the yarn back in and try to come back out at the original point of entry. Once I'm satisfied with the way the eyebrows sit and I'm comfortable with how it looks, I can then tie off my ends. Snip the excess yarn and feed the knot back into the doll. And there you have it. You've completed embroidering the eyes. As you can see, I've now attached one of my ears to the doll, and I'm going to make the second. To do that, you're going to need your skin colored yarn, your 3.0mm crochet hook, your tapestry needle, and a pair of scissors. Grab your skin colored yarn, and as you can see, I've placed my ear about 3 stitches away from the eye and at a halfway point between the top and the bottom of the eye. I'm going to find that same area on the other side of my face and insert my hook. For round 1, I'm going to attach my yarn. And chain 1 to secure it to the doll. Now in that space that I've created, I'm going to make my stitches there. Now into the loop that I created, I'm going to put 2 single crochets followed by a slip stitch. That's the first. Make your second. Followed by a slip stitch into that loop. Snip the excess. Now if you find that it's too loose, you can tighten it by pulling in the original piece of yarn. Tighten it and adjust it how you'd like it to be. And then weave them back into your piece. And there you have it. You've completed making the ears for your doll. Now we're going to embellish her collar, create her belt, and her boots. To do that, you're going to need your yellow or your gold colored yarn, some pins, your tapestry needle, your crochet hook, 3mm, and a pair of scissors. To begin, we're going to create a slip knot. For your first and only row, you're going to chain 16 chains and then fasten off, leaving a long thread for sewing it to the body. 16 chains is what worked for me. However, it might differ for your doll, and I would suggest measuring it as you go to ensure that you have the correct amount of chains required to create the belt. Once you're satisfied with the length of your belt, you can then fasten off and, leaving a long tail, cut the yarn. Now that your belt is ready, you can begin to place it on the doll, using the pins to secure it in place to ensure that the fit is exactly the way you'd like it to be. When you're satisfied with the way the belt is placed, you can then use the long tail of the yarn to begin sewing your belt into place. I'm going to finish sewing, and then I will see you back when I've finished securing the belt to the body. The belt is secure, and now let's move on to the boots. Now, there's no particular pattern that I followed in order to create the boots. I merely followed the regular zigzag patterns that are seen on most boots. I went up in one direction, then looped the yarn around the leg at the top, and then came back down in the opposite direction. Once I've finished creating the X pattern on the boots, I feed the yarn into the back of the boot, snip the excess, and tuck in the ends. After that, I'm going to repeat it once again on the other leg. I'm back, and now both boots are embroidered. Now we're going to move on up to the head and the head pieces, as well as her earrings and her blush. Hiya! Now Rumi's accessories do not need to be elaborate or fancy or shiny if you do not have access to them. You can also do it with yarn, and for that you can use your 3mm hook, make a slip knot, and make a bunch of simple chains in order to create her earrings. So for example, a slip knot with 1, 2, 3 chains, pull a long yarn, snip it, and you can create her earrings that way. To create the embellishments in her hair, you could use yarn and your tapestry needle and feed the yarn between the strands of the hair in order to create the design that you like. I happen to have jump rings with me, so I'm going to use those in order to do her earrings, her earpieces, and the buckles on her collar and on her belt. I linked up some of the jump rings in order to create more dangly earrings, but I kept some of the others loose so that I can add the ear cuffs and a piece of the collar and another piece of the belt. I'm going to grab my pliers and I'm going to attach the earrings to her ear. So let's take a few moments to enjoy the music and watch me struggle. And now we have dangly earrings. Now it's time to move on to her blush. And that of course is entirely optional, but I'm choosing to do it. I'm going to use some paper. I happen to have some pastel chalk and making some scrapings. And using a Q-tip, I'm going to gently apply it to her cheeks. And it's done. Now let's move on to her hair. I happened to find these beads at the local dollar store, and I had them for the longest time without using them, and I realized they'd be perfect for this project. To attach them, you could use a hot glue gun, and that's perfectly safe, but I'm going to choose to use the E6000. Now it does say caution, so you need to use personal protective equipment while using these products. This is the E6000 that's all-purpose. Make sure not to get the one that is meant for automobiles. And as before, I hope you get to enjoy the music while watching me struggle. And we've reached the finish line. Congratulations on making it all the way here. Now take a step back, enjoy your work, and give your hands a little bit of a rest. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. And I'll see you at the next one. Now it's time for the final reveal.